We're here today with the a very famous Freeway Rick Ross, and also he's getting into the boxing business as an advisor, and he's going to be assisted by longtime fight man Rick Glazer, who has been involved in so many fights over the years. So thank you both for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think it's a very fascinating venture, Freeway. And just, I want you to be able to tell a story. I could try to tell the story from what I've read about you, but I want you to be able to tell our viewers, like, basically tell them how fascinating your life was and the things that you were involved in. Just basically presiding over the Los Angeles Empire from the mid 80s on.
I'll try to make it quick and sweet. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. My mom moved from Texas when I was about 3, maybe 4 years old. And I grew up like any other kid. I thought my way out of the ghetto was going to be through tennis. I was a pretty good tennis player. But at the age of 18, when it was time for me to graduate, I found out that not being able to read and write was going to hinder me from going to college and pursuing my tennis career. Something that I had kind of put all my eggs in one basket. I didn't know that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, but that's what I did. And so after that, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So one day I was sitting on my porch, and one of my who we call big homies called me, and he said, "Man, I got the new thing." He was somebody I looked up to. He played college football. Matter of fact, he was running behind the guy who was a runner-up for the Heisman that year. And he told me to come by his house. When I went by, he showed me cocaine for the first time and kind of gave me the spiel about what cocaine was, where it was going, and how big it was going to be. And he gave me a sample, told me to see what I could do with it. And that first piece that he gave me, I got beat out of it. But that didn't discourage me. I knew that if what he was telling me was true, that I was going to be rich. And I continued. I eventually came up with my own money, $125. My partner had $125. And we took that and we turned that into $3 million a day. Sometimes, not every day, but at least $1 million every day for 2 years, our last 2 years in the business. By the time I was 28, I was indicted, looking at a life sentence without the possibility of parole, went to prison, got a life sentence. While I was in prison, taught myself to read and write, found the issue that eventually got myself out of prison after 20 years. But while I was in prison, I kind of went back over my life, all the things that I had done, where I made mistakes, when I should have went right and I went left, and I wanted to right those wrongs. And when I was there, I thought back to the day that I was at a fight, Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler, and we were all sitting at a table in Caesar's Palace, and Don King walked up and he shook everybody's hand at the table. And when I was in prison with that life sentence, I often thought about where would I be had I got up and told Don King I had $3 million, and I would give it all to him if he let me ride with him. And when I was in prison, I thought about that. When I got out, Don King was one of the people that I went and talked to. I asked Don if I could come and work for him. I would work for free just so that I could correct my wrongs. He didn't take the offer, but I continued to pursue boxing after that. And eventually, I ran into the smartest man in boxing, which is my man, Rick Glazer. And, I'm just ecstatic to have the opportunity not only to work with him and to have him guide my career, but just to know this guy as a friend is unbelievable. And I hear all the rumors, people this, that about, and I'll be like, wow, it must be because this guy always tell the truth. He always tries to keep his word. And this is why people don't like him. And those are the qualities that I just love about this guy. And I feel so fortunate to be working with him. And I can tell you this here, he's almost single-handedly giving me boxing.
Wow. What was it about boxing that, when you talk about wanting to go clean, what was it about boxing that you wanted to follow? Was it, back in the day, were you a big boxing fan? Were you around the sport? Did you go to those big fights with all the money you were earning?
At first I didn't. My girlfriend talked me into going. All I wanted to do was work. I absolutely adore work. My wife tells me now that I talk about two things: my two kids and work.
That's okay. Yeah.
She said I'm very, very boring. So what really excited me about boxing, and it wasn't just boxing. I wanted to get out of the dope business. I did not want to be a dope dealer. I felt that I started selling dope out of ignorance, not really understanding what I was getting myself into, not knowing that to be a seller is addictive. You become to a point to where you cannot function without the drug. Every single day I wanted my fix, and my fix was to buy 100 kilos, 200 kilos, and sell them, and then do it again tomorrow. So it's very addictive. I think that it's even more addictive than the user, because when you're using, there's people that will tell you, hey, don't use dope. That dope is not good for you. But when you're a seller, nobody has the nerve to tell you that it's wrong. They I guess they're intimidated by you. They're afraid of you. They want the lifestyle that you're living. So nobody will tell you that you shouldn't be selling drugs.
Yeah, and I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I know you were gone for 13 years, but given your network of contacts that you had built, it seems to me like you probably, even though things may have changed, you probably could have got back into that business if you had wanted to.
Oh, no. When I was in prison, they put me with all the drug dealers, the international traffickers, the Colombian cartel. I mean, I could go to Colombia and get cocaine now without fear, because I know the guys from Colombia, which I didn't know before. Before it was, my connection was a CIA operative who had been sent over here once they got kicked out of their country. But when I went to prison, I met guys that they had snatched from Colombia and brought over here, and guys that were smuggling cocaine from Colombia to here. I mean, it's like in federal prison, you mix the streets with the cartel and the Mexican mafia.
I got to ask you as a journalist, because I've actually, read some about that with the CIA and the Nicaragua connection and all of that stuff. That was true. Were you a source at all to the reporter who did that? Because he ended up being held up to a lot of ridicule for the reporting. Did you end up helping him throughout that process? Can you reveal that?
I did. He came and visited me when I was in prison. We talked about my drug supplier, who eventually became my informant, who we later found out was also a CIA operative. I helped him with my side of the story. I knew nothing about what the CIA was doing, what the Contra was doing. Remember when me and him was dealing, I didn't read, I didn't watch the news, so I couldn't read the newspaper. I didn't even know what a Contra was until after I was in prison, and this hit the fan, and then I started studying those issues. Unbelievable.
I mean, we could spend the rest of the segment, and I'm sure hopefully at some fight week I'd love to sit down and talk to you about all this, because it's just so fascinating. It's unbelievable. The things that you
I would love to do that with you.
Yeah,
I would love to do that with you.
Especially being here in Los Angeles. And I think that's what I wanted to ask you, because are you still based in LA?
I am.
Okay.
I have a book out, so I travel the country with my book, and I have fighters all over the country, and I do motivational speaking. I go to juvenile detention centers and jails and high schools and junior high schools, wherever they hear me. I go and try to spread the word about really, just the whole thing about drugs, because I think that the way that we fight the drug war in this country is totally backwards. In school they tell you that it's going to be some mean, ugly guy that's going to turn you on to drugs, but what I found out is that's not the case. It's usually somebody close to you, a dear friend, father, mother, brother, sister, cousin, usually the ones who turn us on to drugs for our first time, because if some stranger comes up with an ugly face, we're going to be scared and take off running. But if it's somebody, a face that you trust and you believe in, if they come and show you, it's easier to get introduced. Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. And
being in Los Angeles, we always talk about how Mexico is the most fertile breeding ground for fighters, but Los Angeles in America is probably the most fertile breeding ground for fighters. And in a lot of cases, it is the Latino fighter, but there's a lot of talented athletes out here. I mean, you talked about your friends in football. There are so many athletes out here, and there's so many gyms out here. Do you look at the LA area and say, look, given who you are in the LA fiefdom, so to speak, that you have the ability to go to some of these kids and connect with them and lead them to boxing and allow these kids to really shine in the sport as you see their potential being so great?
Absolutely. LA is one of the places that I want to work with. For the most part, one of the things that I found out about the kids in the inner city, what hampers them from getting into the business, is that a lot of times they don't have the finances. You're talking about you got to buy gloves, headgear. Headgear is about $250. The jock strap, gloves, wraps, shoes. So you're talking about a kid that's going to need about $600 or $700 to get into the business, and it's almost impossible for most kids in that area. So what we want to do eventually is we want to start programs to where these kids, if they come to the gym, if they dedicate themselves, they keep their grades up, and if they can't keep their grades up, if they're willing to go to tutoring and just get the help that the kids need. Because a lot of times these people, we don't have anybody to teach us financial literacy. I could only imagine what would have happened with me if I would have had somebody, like Rick Glazier now, that would have came to me and took me under his wing and said, I'm going to teach you, how to be in the fight game. Where would I be, now today? But I didn't understand that back then. I thought that, you do what everybody else is doing. If you see everybody else doing it, it must be okay.
Yeah, but even in that scenario, you kind of outsmarted everyone. What is now, I know you guys just sent out a new, yeah, right?
Lance, the guy got life in prison, but he outsmarted people. I like that one. That was good.
Yeah, well, you guys have started. You guys just put out a release that you've signed five fighters, including the brother of Lamont Peterson, correct? Anthony Peterson.
Yes.
I'm assuming that this is just the start of it. Do you guys have like a fight ready to go where one of your guys is going to be taking the stage, or what exactly are your plans? And Rick Glazier, you can go ahead and weigh in on this if you'd like.
Well, we had some plans for January, but they've been scuttled because of the COVID. Everybody that was doing a show in January is now doing shows in late February, and people were doing them in February are now doing them in April. So our plans are, quote, a little derailed.
Okay.
But that's due to COVID, not because of us. Since we met in late October, in the last 2 months, Rick signed 5 additional. He had one fighter. He signed 5 additional fighters. We're looking at multiple fighters assigned right now. We're in discussions with multiple different fighters, all relatively young. One guy's 6-0, one guy's 8-0, and we're looking to. We don't want to overdo it. There's a lot of people coming to us over the last couple of weeks since the rumors were out there that we were working together, and I've turned down a lot of fighters that were like, I wouldn't say they didn't fit what we were looking for. We're looking for 3 different types of fighters. We're looking for young, undefeated prospects like everybody else is. We're looking for guys that are already contenders or a fight away from being a contender like everybody else is. But the third thing we're looking for is something that nobody else is looking for. And Rick emphasized this Freeway emphasized this when I first met him, and he's continued to do so. So I know he's sincere about it. He said to me that society gave him a second chance, and he wants to give fighters a second chance that were maybe disadvantaged earlier in their career, and they had a loss, and their manager, promoter put them on the shelf, or their trainer dropped them, and all kinds of stuff. And we have signed one of those type of fighters in Elvin Vermel already. He hadn't fought since September of 2008. He actually came off a win, but the fight before that he lost, and the people that he had sort of lost interest in him. And basically speaking is we took what we have is a 16-1 guy who's like 29 years old, light heavyweight, and he's 3 fights away from being in a big fight. I mean, he lost his one fight on Showbox, a slick left-hander who's still undefeated, who was at one time in the top 5 in the world, but's been inactive because I guess I heard he caught COVID. I'm not saying he did. I just heard that, but I never checked into it. But make a long story short, is Rick said, you know, I want to work with fighters that give them a second chance. And this is our first fray, and that our first fighter in that part of it.